Good evening, everybody. We got a real special one tonight. Wednesday night text to the stars. We have one heck of a guitar tech, and you got to be one heck of a guitar tech if you're going to work underneath Lukather, who, in my opinion, needs no introduction. But I have a feeling, some of you may want to know exactly who Steve Lukather is. And here goes my switcher is going to go crazy for a second. Yep, there we go. I've changed out my modem, and hopefully tonight's stream will be a little less laggy. And there we go, lagging up already. Let me just catch up here. And if you're here in the chat, go ahead and leave me a comment. Make sure you can hear. And thanks for being here. Tonight, we're going to have Jon Gosnell join us. And he and I have been chatting it up a little bit over the past couple days. And I've known Jon since the early 90s. And sometimes you get to a point where you've known somebody for so long that you can almost forget certain things have happened. And we've been just reminiscent about where we've been and what we've done together. So without any further introductions, I'm going to bring Mr. Jon Gosnell out and say, oops, where'd you go? There we are. And say, hi there, Jon. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Fine, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you.
Looking forward to talking and saying hey to everybody, and hope everyone's doing well and having as happy a new year as we can have.
Yeah, exactly.
And keeping busy.
Yep. That's as busy as this business will keep us at the moment, right? So
yeah.
That's just so you know, that's my purpose in this, is that the stars have a lot going on, and right now the techs don't really have much going on. Our world has changed, and
drastically.
Yep, looks like Billy Wagner here. Looks like, hey, first off, my dad says, "Hey, what's up?" And Billy Wagner says, "Hey, Jon." And
hey.
Yep, you're getting some shout out from the crowds. Rob Rutz.
Oh, Rob, hey.
So thank you guys all for being here and sending the shout outs to Jon here. Jeff Everhart, yes, another local Marylander here. Jeff, thanks for joining in again. You guys may have crossed paths at some point. That's the great thing about Baltimore and this industry, is we end up crossing paths. So you and I, you reminded me, you were there when in my Average Joe's days, the early 90s in the cover bands.
That's correct.
And you kind of were there. You kind of gave me that high five when I got into the national band. And next thing you know, a few years into that, you're a guitar tech. I'm looking over, and there you are, guitar teching. And we're teaching each other, and you're egging me on, and I'm egging you on. And
it was a great time.
That was a great time. And then next thing you know, we're on Hall & Oates together. And Boomer's here. He says, yo.
Right on, Boomer.
Yep. And you have Brian Biven here.
Brian Biven, hey.
Yep. And Rob Rutz says, glad to see you guys. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for being here. So, and then
thanks.
Further down the road, I'm not playing guitar anymore, and I'm checking for Hall & Oates, and you're on the road with Hall & Oates, and you're doing a number of things.
Yeah, on that one I wasn't guitar teching, but it was another segment of being in the business at the time and doing what the job called for, which was what I was offered. And sometimes, or a lot of times, that comes up as well, where you might be asked to do something that's in your skill set, but that you don't normally or have done before. So it's all part of the the business.
I call that adding tools, because even if it's not necessarily something that you know how to do, if you can do it and you do something well, people will notice, and they'll ask you to do something maybe that you actually really enjoy to do. So
exactly.
And Gail is here. Gail says good evening. So thanks, Gail. How you doing? So let's back up a little bit. One thing that I have so far, there's been a common theme with almost every one of my guests, has been music. Was their entrance into this industry. And then there was a turning point where they were like, I love music. I'm not going to play music for my life though. So, but I love this industry. What am I going to do? How let's step back for you and let's
Of
talk
course.
about how music started for you and was there a turning point? And let's talk about that for you there for just a couple minutes and then we'll get into some of the Luke stuff.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Well, it all started for me musically at a very young age. I'd say kindergarten. I grew up in a suburb of Pittsburgh, and I had an older cousin. And at the time, I started like all the young kids in kindergarten, you know, singing and playing recorder and all that. And then I started it on trumpet and played that for 2 years and switched to saxophone. And I guess because I seem to remember that most of my friends played saxophone and the trumpets didn't sit near the saxophone players. So I guess I wanted to be with my friends, so I switched to the saxophone, and so we were all sitting together. Probably a bad choice, but I really enjoyed both instruments. But
yeah.
So that was my intro to the music itself. And
Okay. Great.
I remember I went over to my cousin's house. Our families would get together, and I remember walking up the sidewalk to his house, and he had his bedroom window open, and I could hear the power chords to "Owner of a Lonely Heart," and and I just was like, "What is that?" And I was still pretty young at this point, probably 9, 10 years old. And I went up and watched him play the riffs and the guitar, and I was just like, "Oh my God, I want to do that." But my parents were so adamant that I had switched over to the saxophone. They thought I was too young. So it wasn't until I moved to Maryland that the guitar really became, I got one and I really started to play. And my introduction to the local scene through Paul Reed Smith, the guitar maker, and his cover band at the time. I was fortunate enough to get guitar lessons from the guitarists in his band.
Wow.
And that kind of led to me coming out.
What year was that, if you don't mind me asking? Around what year was that?
Oh, 86, 87.
Wow. Okay. Sorry for interrupting. I just want to get
no.
Okay. So Paul's
around that time, and I had had a guitar. I was taking guitar lessons, and then I was going down to the clubs at night and help setting up the band, learning how to set up and work. Everything was analog, obviously, in those days. But PA system, setting up guitar rig, drum kit, bass amp, so I was playing, and I had my own band at the time, The Rain. So I was kind of performing with them and then still working for all these other guys, So that was kind of the start of the quote tech side and the music side. It just coincided and made sense,
Yeah.
I always figured, well, if I'm going to be a guitar player, I'm going to have to know how to, stuff breaks and, tubes blow. And I figured it's all part of the game. It just seemed to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, the more technical aspects of it, like I'm not an amp technician per se. I don't work on circuit boards. I have before, but it's just not, I'm not an electrical engineer, but I know how to upkeep, normal tube amplifiers and things like that. But you learn all along. And I think the people that I grew up with around here were always eager to show, how to do things. And if you would ask and, and show interest, I was always able to learn a lot of things, from that I, never knew anything about otherwise. So that was what got me into the local music scene. And then, I played with various bands, throughout the 90s. And I guess by the late 90s, you needed a tech, and Roy was out with us, and a few other people as well. And I came into the fold as a tech for you.
Yep.
And that sort of carried on.
Yep.
So
I
that led us up to what, 03 or
well, yeah,
04?
I left there in 01, so it would have been, I left Chicken Shack at the end of 01, and
Yeah,
02 we met back up for
that's right. 02, yeah.
around that period. So yeah, that's a broad time, and that's definitely you got a toolbox, and you're just throwing stuff in there. And
Yeah.
like you said, you don't really know what you're going to need, but you have your knowledge limits, and so
Sure.
you want to work within those. And what I've always noticed, and I think what you just kind of alluded to and really are pushing at here, is that if you really show an interest in something and you ask somebody that does something from their heart, with love, if
Mhm.
you ask, with interest about it, they will gladly teach,
Yeah.
because it means something. And learning, I can't stand watching somebody that has a guitar that's set up in a certain way or does this or does that. I have my things. It's not that I can't stand it, but it makes me go, oh, I couldn't play that. But man, he's good. It's cool that he does that. And so,
Right.
as a player and as a technician, you become to have your way. And so after we kind of cross paths, I go and do my thing, you go and do your thing. Rob actually just pointed out what a great story. The comment right here. What a great story, considering with Owner a Lonely Heart, you would tech for Luke while touring with Yes. So there's a bit of a circle there.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah,
It's pretty.
that's ironic. Yeah, because I'll never forget that he played "Owner of a Lonely Heart" walking up and that was a hit at the time. So even though I was younger, I had heard it and knew what it was. So yeah, it is ironic. We did get a big summer tour in with Yes, and that was a lot of fun for sure.
Amazing band. There's just some amazing acts out there, and the fact that you are with Steve Lukather now and have been for what now, 8 years?
Well, technically, I guess going on 9. I joined in 2012,
Okay, so
and that was right when Luke came on into the band, and he needed a tech for that, and I was assigned.
wait.
Ironically,
This was
I
Ringo Starr band.
yes, in Ringo Starr, he was
As the Ringo Starr guitarist.
exactly
He was
so.
hired, and you came into that fold that way.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
gotcha.
And so I hadn't met him prior, and I talked to him, before the tour rehearsals started. I called him and asked him, questions about what does he, require, what my job parameters were and what he needed me to do for him, and how it would go down, so to speak. And it worked out great. We did an entire summer tour, and went all over the U.S. and had a great time. And then he went back to Toto, because he's always on the road.
Right.
He does an insane, amount of shows every year. So it's a constant, tennis match. He's always going from one to the other, flip flopping tours, and of course his solo bands, Nerve Bundle, and the band with Bill Evans. He's just always playing, and which is great. That's what guitar players do, and so he keeps me very busy, except for this past year.
Yeah. Well, we can all hope that this next year we'll get just as busy. So
Oh yeah, I hope so.
he tours so much, in fact, that you have an A and a B rig for him. And so what we're looking at here is
Oh.
yes, and Rob, adding to what we're saying, he's looking forward to the future with the cruise to the edge, where Yes and Luke will once again be together. Well, that'll be a cool
Yeah, that was the last tour we had before the virus hit. We were going to do that cruise. So we'll be doing that one again for sure.
So you have, for him to be able to do this, you need to kind of do the old Pink Floyd thing. You need to have one system in one place and another system ready to go at another.
Yeah, not always, but there have been times where we will be flying in somewhere, for a show, and just scheduling conflicts with air freight. Sometimes we have to have a backup rig, right. And we have it. This is the B rig, I guess you would call it.
This is a B rig.
Yeah.
Love
so it. These are the old amps here on the bottom, and this one on top is the new model he switched over to a few years back. So I have them all in case we need to, bring a head out. That the top amplifier is the spare in his A rig. So that's the one you see sitting on top, at all the shows.
Okay, so
that goes with me every tour we do.
So either one, that would go back and forth then.
Yep. The others are only brought out in rare instances that, we have a one-off in China, and then a week later we got to be in, North America for a tour where we can't ship one rig in time.
That's got to be stressful, and that'll go along right here. Billy has asked, John, what was your most stressful gig as a tech? And then we'll get back to kind of talking about how the A and the B rig run here together. But
sure.
Does that now that's got to add stress alone, having to have two rigs that you're kind of maintaining and wondering where this one is at certain times. That's got to cause stress. But was there a moment where you were like, God, this right here was the most stressful thing I've ever done? Was there one of those?
Well, the short answer, yeah, definitely. I don't remember one particular instance, though. I mean, with like a rig such as this, cables will fail. You're gonna get RF interference if you're running a wireless, or prior to him switching to a guitar wireless, the cable going from his guitar to the pedal board would fail. And we always do our best on the road to. We test the cables, and obviously we play on the rigs a lot and test everything as much as we can on a show day, so that by the time the artist comes in for sound check, we've spent all day trying to find issues before they happen. And you can't always know it's impossible to be stuff will break. So there have been times during the show where we've had RF interference, or, something like that fails, or a tube blows. Well, actually, that hasn't happened I don't know it's happened once where I had to get them into the backup. But again, that's why I bring the spare, because I just pull and then I can have them back up and running in 10 seconds or less, and they don't have to stop the show and walk off stage and, stuff like that. I have had some, very stressful gigs, mostly like if something major has happened. Like one time, I think early on in 2013, I remember we had an issue with the main Ecstasy amp head. It turned out it was, it turned out it was just it was making this intermittent noise, and I had spent all day trying. I could not figure out what was causing this. And crazy enough, it turned out that by the time Luke walked out for sound check, we still didn't know what was wrong, and it kept happening. And it turned out to be a light hitting the back of the amp, hitting the actual power tube. I've never seen this happen before or since.
Wow.
But we isolated it. I mean, I had, front of house, I had guys helping me because it's hard to be at the pedal board and turning amp standbys and then in the back of the amp trying to do all of this, with one person. And it was a moving light, and it would come to rest right on and literally light up the back of the amp and hit this tube, and it would just freak the amp out.
Oh my
God.
And
yeah, so I just took a piece of gaff tape and covered the little vent where the tube was, and it went away. And that was that. It was an easy fix, and it's never happened again. I've taken the gaff off. I can't get it to happen again. But
gaff tape is a tech's savior. It's like every tech. What do you got? What's the first thing in your box? Gaff tape.
Yep. Gaff tape.
And
a ton of stuff.
Our biggest nightmare, even the intermittent stuff, like you're proving. Intermittent is 4-letter word to us. We hate intermittent. You may as well. I mean, you're going to be chasing your tail until you figure that out, and that's crazy. That would just make a stressful moment.
Well, the reason why something like that would be stressful is because of time. Time is really to a tech on a show day. Time is your enemy.
Yeah.
That's really the name of the game. Every day is sort of like Groundhog Day, in that you're really doing, the same thing over and over, and usually in a similar, time frame. A lot of our load-ins are 10 a.m. So, you might start dumping the truck at 10 a.m., but, you're not going to have your station and everything out and set up until noon,
right.
Or 12:30. And then, you've got an afternoon window, which, sometimes you have blackout, times at union run venues where you can't make any noise or be on stage. And that usually lasts an hour.
Yep.
Sometimes you have 2 of those in a show day, and you're always pressing, you're always, the clock is your enemy. And you can get really worked up when you're trying to solve a problem and you can't, no matter what you do, you can't seem to isolate the issue. And then it's a matter of, oh my God, what are we going to do? And that can be very stressful. But then again, you learn to deal with it. You realize that, hey, that's why we have spare cables, or we always have spare amplifiers, spare guitars, and the stress of the situation, whatever it may be, plays a real big factor, because it's really just, I've had gig nightmares, where oh my God, I'm late for I missed the start of the show,
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing.
I've had nightmares about it too, like that I'm watching a show and all of a sudden hey, Dave, get up here. We need No, I'm watching. No, I'm watching, man. Okay, so let's get back to your. Let's look at your rig. Yeah. At Steve Lukather's rig here. This is his B rig. You're saying his normal pedal board is a good bit bigger than this one, but this is like if he needs everything pretty much on the smaller scale, he can still use this rig.
Basically how this all got started, me being a gearhead, I'm a huge fan of Luke's as well. And so, I was out on the road and, I would go buy a pedal of his or try out, whatever he had, at the time. And, over the years, I just wound up building up, pedals, buying them. I mean, this is all my equipment, but it winds up coming out on the road with us when need be. And it's been a big savior for Luke and I, because I can have a satellite board like this, which is a little smaller than his main board, but has most of the stuff. And, for fly dates, that's mainly why his main pedal board weighs over 70 pounds. So when you go to an airport, they're going to, the expense of that is quite high. So this one I got under 70, so we don't have to, we can actually fly it on a plane without, getting killed with high prices. So, but all the amps travel air freight. We can't take those on a plane; they're just too heavy.
Yep. Okay,
but
so
yeah, this is what would you like to know first about
let's get into
Tower of Wagner?
I love the tech, just on the basic, most simple technical side of it. The reason you have it in a pyramid scheme is the solution to a problem. Now, if one of those amps goes out, your cable run is only so long, and for each one of those amps has a particular cable or set of cables going to it. If you swap and that amp was somewhere else, what does that do? Why exactly is it right there?
Well, when I finally got this amp and I had it out on tour, I'm not even sure Luke was aware that I had it until he came out to sound check. But I had it, and I was thinking, okay, stage look is a concern too. You don't want to be stacking it up too tall and blocking other people. But, when you're dealing with just a dual half stack rig, you could either stack it up on one head, which looks lopsided, or the other. But the real thing is, if I got to pull the input out of the main head or his main amplifier, which is always top right, in this case, it would be this amp here. If I got to pull the input here, I don't have to go very far to hit the spare. On the return amp,
nothing hanging there waiting or anything like that. Nothing.
Exactly. It's just bam, bam, hit the standby, go.
Yeah.
And that being said, for the return amp, the only cable feeding this amp at all is hitting the effects loop return on the back.
On the back.
So I just lean over, grab that, and stick it into the back of this one. If that amp, if either amp dies,
so it can be.
It makes it uniform, so I don't have to, any cable will reach in that center position.
Yep.
And Luke liked the look of it. I just kind of set it there so I could test everything. And I was looking at it, and I thought, oh, that looks kind of cool, And Luke came out and was like, oh my God, I love it. Just leave it in the middle. He took a picture, sent it to Reinhold, and we set it up every day like that ever since. So
Wagner Reinhold, the amp maker, for anybody that doesn't know. So
yep, Reinhold Wagner's a great builder.
Reinhold,
really great guy. And he's always got some new thing coming out, and Luke's a big fan of the amps. He's been on them for a long time now, and it's his sound. So that's sort of the how we got the pyramid stack, and the pedal board is just a lighter version of the main pedal board, the last one I built for him.
And then so there's Marine 129 says, "Tell him, John." What's up, Marine? Hoorah, my man. So does he run? So he's running stereo. So it's a true left-right thing going on, and then so he has front end effects and then return effects. So
correct.
Am I right in that? Okay, so there's a loop for the amp on the right, and then that splits back.
Well, what's really going on? You know what? Let me. All right. Let me tilt this thing up. Maybe you can see this a little better. How's that?
Yeah.
That better? Okay. Yeah. It's how he's running his rig is coming out either a guitar cable if we're in the studio, or if we're on stage, he runs a wireless setup. And the first thing we're going to hit is the buffer, which is on this board is top middle.
Okay.
And from the buffer, we have a split to the tuner, and then the second output is the remaining signal. And he hits, a univibe, a chorus. Then he goes into the overdrives, which is this guy, the bomb distortion, and then his Steve Lukather signature pedal, the 789. And
Okay.
it's like a clean boost, a blue channel that's a little more overdrive, and then total mayhem on that. And you know what? I'm sorry. Before it hits these, it hits the volume and wah. That's what I messed up on. And then it hits that. Gotcha. And the last pedal in his chain is the Strymon Lex. And we go mono out into the front of this top right amplifier.
Okay.
So that's mono into the preamp of the right Bogner. From there, we're coming out of that effects loop mono, returning back to the board.
Okay.
And we're hitting a smart gate, a noise gate, which is here. If you can see on this guy.
That stops all the preamp noise, basically, and all the distortion noise. He's got basically a gate stopping any kind of noise at the way he wants it, such as to his point, I'm sure.
And to be quite honest with you, a lot of people in the past have asked me, about that noise gate. And its real job, most of the time, it's off. Most of the time.
Okay.
Because
he turns it off manually?
Well, it's not needed most of the time.
Okay.
Because front of house has gates on his, his mic inputs, to the console. So you don't hear the amp hiss out in the PA, when he stops playing. What the function of the smart gate for is in some venues, when you go to a single coil.
I gotcha.
And, the 60 cycle hum from the lighting rig.
Gotcha.
In various venues, it's so bad. Yeah. Like it really is bad. And that's when we'll turn that on. Okay. And we'll play through the whole show, with that on. But that's only in the event that we have really unbearable 60 cycle hum. So it doesn't happen often, but it does happen enough to where that's why that's on the board.
Gotcha.
But most of the time, it's off. Very From there, we hit the analog delay, and that's mono from the effects end. That's always on.
Oh, really? Mild. He always has a mild analog delay running. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And this is a Guru's pedal. It's an Italian company. This is a kind of like their version of an old Benson Echo Rec. Very reminiscent of that sound.
So
he loves it. And for his in-ears, because he's on in-ear monitors, it's sort of, you can tell that there's delay there, but it's not so noticeable. And he likes that. And so we just leave that on all the time. And then we hit the reverb, the Strymon Blue Sky. And we go into that. That's also on all the time. Never turns it off.
Wow. Okay.
Unless he's in the studio.
And that Blue Sky is a reverb?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's reverb. Okay.
Yeah. And we'll set. So the analog delay and reverb is always on. And from there, we come into the reverb mono, but there we go out in stereo.
That's the split. Okay. Gotcha.
That's where it gets split into stereo. Okay. And we feed, in this case, these are the older hardwired DL8s, delay pedals.
Delays, okay.
Which we used for years, 2000, ever since I joined them, up until about 2 years ago. They stopped making these for some reason. I don't know why. And he's now got TC Electronic Flashback 2s, which have replaced the DL8s.
Yeah, okay.
But they're being fed in series stereo from the reverb. So it's stereo in left and right to the DL8 and little barrel plugs to connect the second. And this is where we return to each amplifier's effects return from the outputs of the delays.
Gotcha.
So, output A will go to the main return of the main amp, and the B or the the B output or the right or whatever goes to the other amp's return. So you get this, kind of centered main tone between it really does a nice stereo spread with the delay. And even though it's technically not a wet, dry, wet rig, it gives the sound of it sort of, because you have your left and right delays returning to both or to each one separately, and then you have your center, monotone. So it really works, and it sounds amazing. It's a very efficient way to run, a stereo delay rig without, having to have a huge rack of stuff.
Now, speaking of racks of stuff, sit in the middle again, so I can chat with you about. A couple of people said are giving you shout outs too and saying,
"Oh, nice!
You definitely know your gear." And Arizona watching, and Frankie G says, "What's up, guys?" I'll make sure everybody gets their shouts to you. But so this rig and his main rig, very very similar in tone and basically come down to size and a couple of other choices.
Sure.
But he used to be, so we already, just from that alone, I want people to understand he is a technician. He is not only a technical player and can play and has played and will continue to play some amazing stuff with everybody, which is another point we'll get to. But he used to use an incredibly complex and massive rig. He was very known for that in the 80s, and it was used a Bradshaw switching system. Is that correct? And now you at some point yourself had a Bradshaw, right?
I did.
Did that come in handy for you? Like in convo with him, was there a moment where you guys were ever like, you know what, let's break out the Bradshaws for a minute? Oh, no.
Yeah, I think well, yes and no. There was a knowledge of that I had previously from owning my own Bradshaw system. But he had already retired that Bradshaw rig before I ever met him. Like I want to say by, 3-4 years before, maybe even longer before I joined him.
So he played that with him for a long time.
Well, yeah, and ironically, the story there goes, yes, because when I first joined up with the Ringo Starr crew, when we were having pre-rehearsal conversations and I came into the mix, I was originally signed to take care of Todd Rundgren and Richard Page, who were, Richard Page from Mr. and of course Todd Rundgren. They were also coming back they have been both in the band prior to this lineup, but they were coming back for this 2012 lineup. Huh. And I got a call from Hawkeye, who was assigned to take care of Steve Lukather. And Hawkeye called me and said, "Hey, I heard you're a guitarist." And I said, "Yeah." And I heard you have experience with, a Bradshaw rig. And I said, "Yeah, I've got one." And he said, "Would you mind taking Luke?" He said, I don't know a lot about, his rig like that. And maybe, would you mind swapping and taking Lukather and I'll take Todd and Richard? And, I was like, I was like, oh my Lord, Steve Lukather, it was, I said, sure.
Right, yeah.
And so that's how I got swapped over to take care of Luke in the first place, was based on a Bradshaw system.
I'm so glad I asked that question. That's incredible, because I remember, like, one of my first conversations with you in the early 90s was, I got a Bradshaw system, and later on in life, being like, God, that Bradshaw system is, even at the time you first told me about it, I had heard about it and all, it was beyond me. And still kind of the way, like, I have a pretty complex pedal board, and But
Yeah.
the way that Luke's running his, and the way that some people versus the way some people just take two pedals, plug them in, and go. Like this guy is a technician. So you have to be a technician to a technician, essentially, and your musical, then your own personal musical knowledge and love of this gear kind of brings you into somebody's hands in a really, that's a really interesting story. I think how gear can bring people together, because I remember having so many conversations with you over gear, and just our sharing our bond of sounds and PRSs and what they're missing.
PRS was a big topic back at that time.
Yeah. It's still, to me, like this stuff is amazing. But you've got now, so then that must have really been something. You're on stage, and not only are you looking over at Lukather, but you've got Ringo next to you. Then at that point, you've got to make sure you've got your A game on.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
How do you prepare for something like that coming from, the bar scene? Here we are, you and me. We're 30 some years ago, bar dudes. We're bar hang outer guys. Now we find ourselves in an industry that we care about, and how do you make sure that you bring that care to somebody and get prepared for that like that? What have you done, to kind of mentally prepare for all of that, and in the heat of the moment? What do you think were some of the most important tools that you developed, not just technically but socially as well?
I think there's a lot that go hand in hand. The social aspect of it, certainly the gear aspect of it, but also knowing your job and knowing what is expected of you. Not only from the artist you're taking care of, but all the artists in the group, because you're traveling with these guys, sometimes literally for months and months at a time. And, the more shows you do, the more, everyone working together kind of clicks, and shows become, you become a smoother machine, not always. A lot of the local help is relied upon. So, sometimes you have slower days and things like that, but so much of it comes into play. I think the biggest thing is knowing, from a guitar tech standpoint, knowing your musicians' requirements, obviously what they need. There's always little stuff, that has nothing to do with guitar or guitar gear. Hey, my voice is, they're having trouble with their voice. So, get me some cut ginger, make sure I've got, waters, to the little stuff like that, but also to the big stuff, obviously keeping the guitars in tune and playing smoothly and adjusted, as far as all the back line that I'm in charge of, making sure all that works, but also, looking after your artist in other ways. Like, people have bad days, stuff happens. And, when you're traveling the world, not everyone's, it's not all yay all the time, so you kind of deal with the good and the bad as they roll. And, you try to pay attention to detail so that you can, make your artist more comfortable. And, it always helps as far as, I'm always like, a lot of times I'll be up there and I'll be watching Luke and making sure he's okay. And then I'll look over and, oh yeah, there's Ringo, a Beatle, and it's like, oh my Lord, so there is that, element of, where am I? But you get, you're so focused on the job when the show's going down. It's all about the show. Nothing's going to stop that show. And you've got to be, on it and paying attention. There's no time for, anything, to happen. I mean, stuff occasionally does, but we do our best to have backup plan to the backup plan to the backup plan. So when stuff happens on the fly, you don't think, you react. Okay, I go here first, troubleshoot from there, back, find the issue, reroute, grab a different guitar, change a channel on the wireless. If the wireless is totally screwed, put them on the emergency cable, because you have seconds to fix the problem, because no one, like, I don't care who you are, as a performer or a tech or anyone, nobody wants to be out on that stage when stuff isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah.
An artist can feel naked up there when stuff isn't going right, and nobody wants it. And so you're always just, how can I fix an issue as quickly as possible? Always have backups. Always, I'm always thinking, even though I do this over and over every day, I'm always going through my mental checklist of, okay, for today, make sure I got to do this, I got to do that. I'm going to check this, if anything had happened from the night before, you have a follow-up checklist each day of things to look into or fix or whatever you got to do, depending on the situation. But I'm always in my mind, okay, just reiterating the mental checklist, so that if those occurrences happen, that you can just react and go without having to go, oh my God, what do I do? Because, when it gets heated, it can get really overwhelming. You don't want the artist to have to stand out there for any real length of time, and I try to just be right on top of it and do what I got to do. And he's right back in the show. So that's the name of the game, utilizing your time as best you can, having checklists and fail-safe plans in place, so that if anything like that occurs, you're already reacting to it, not even thinking about it.
Brian says you're an astromech. And it becomes that. It becomes a machine almost. You become mechanical with it. And a common thing that's already also now come up in a couple of them is something that you said: the show is going to happen. And there's no doubt about it. And you're not going to stop it. And and that's too much of an ego thing to even think that that you not stringing up a guitar is going to slow this show down. No, they're going to keep going. And then the next show, you're not going to be there,
Exactly. The show always goes on.
Show will go on.
You're there for it or not.
Right.
They're not going to stop. There's a lot involved with putting on a rock and roll show, of any caliber for that matter, whether you're in a stadium, an arena, a smaller club, the pressure is still the same. We've done a lot of smaller shows where, we normally don't, there's certain clubs throughout the country that are, really small in comparison. And, there's no,
people go there because it's small and intimate. There's places here
exactly more intimate places, and it's the same pressure. It's not like the gig eases up because you're in a smaller venue or anything. It's or a family environment or something like that. It's the same pressure. And to a tech, it's really no different. I mean, a sound check, even, it's really the same pressure as a show, for at least in a lot of times. Maybe not so much mentally, stressful, because I know it's just sound check, and if stuff breaks in sound check, that's really when you want stuff to break.
Yeah.
Because you can fix it and not ruin the show. It's a sound check. That's what it's for.
This is a great point that you're making, because what you're talking about is that you are working at all times for the artist. You are not working for the audience. You are working for that audience. I mean, he's working for the audience. You're working for him at all times. And that time during a sound check, that prep, that time on the bus, that time on the plane after, that time, that's the 99% of touring that is the existence. And you're talking about some of the smaller venues and some of the bigger venues. Rob Hawk has a question. What are some of the more difficult, what venues are more difficult to work? And I guess maybe that's a good question.
It is a very good question.
I know there's probably, we could talk specifically, but you could also talk broadly about that. Let's talk broadly for a minute. And then we can get a little more
Sure.
specific into each one.
Certainly.
Do you as a tech find it easier to work a big venue or kind of these intimate venues like that? Is there something you prefer?
The short answer is they all have a completely different set of hardships.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say, is there one that's better or worse? There's so many. I'll go into detail a little bit about the differences, but I couldn't say that. Well, a stadium show is harder than an arena. Obviously, if you start at the stadium level, that's the biggest. I mean, in upwards of 100,000 people, and a lot of those stadium shows, they don't happen in one day.
No, yeah.
Depending on the size of the act, a lot of acts carry their own staging, their own PA, their own everything, and they have to send forward a stage, and that stage has to be built. Then the lighting the trusses, and so those a big stadium show might take 2 days to set up in a row before the actual show day. So you can look at that and of course, if, me as a guitar tech, I would be backline. My job, I don't build stages, so right. When you're on a tour such as that, we'll be having a day off at a hotel while the staging guys go in and set up and prep for a day, and then maybe lighting and audio the following day. And then the third day is a show day, and I go in for the show day.
Right.
Now, that sounds like, oh, well, you get 2 days off, and wow, that's easy. And it's a double-edged sword because you hear, well, you get 2 days off. That's true, but you got to spend when you're on the road, and even though you have a day off, you got to eat. You got to, it can get very expensive when you have a couple extra days off a week on the road. You can wind up spending a lot more money that way. So it's a balance. But, that being said, as far as, it's hard to compare a stadium show to maybe even an arena show. Because arenas are much smaller, and you don't usually bring anywhere near the amount of gear into an arena that you would per se, not band gear, but you might have less in the way of certain in-house sound sometimes. Not it depends on the artist, but right. And of course the way your day goes, when you set up in a stadium, sometimes you got to push the trucks are way far away from the stage. Imagine a big football stadium, and your bus, you might be on a large crew of 100 people, and you got 18 tour buses and 20 semis, and you're on stage working, you want to go to lunch, and then you're like, oh, I got to walk a mile to catering, or right, it's like little things like that. We're used to walking a ton anyway, but some days you're just like, oh man, I don't feel like walking that far, but you have no choice. So,
and then Rob kind of pointed out too, that he can't say that he's seen techs work any less to manage an Iridium show than a PNC Bank gig. And I think I get it, because you get the double-edged sword of the big shows are. It seems like there's some amazing sides to it, but then there's a lot of work, and that work sometimes can be mashed up. But then you got like a gig, like he mentions the Iridium, and then I'm thinking also like Blue Note up in New York. You're mixing. Oh, yeah. The engineers are mixing from a closet around the corner, or right. The guitar tech has no line of sight. You can't see, and you got like something like Camden Yards. Then you got the next day you're doing some big long push, and you a perfect view of your artist, and you feel completely connected. but it's the next day you're at this little itty bitty gig, and
Yeah.
you can't see them. The engineer isn't mixing; it can't even hear the speakers. So there's a give and take to each one of them. They all have their own glory, and that does come down to you. That's where again you're working for the artist. You make them happy, and that makes.
I have a funny story. If you'd like to hear it.
Of course.
And it actually involves the Iridium.
Okay. Let's hear it.
And this is a perfect, apples oranges to the stadium shows I was just talking about. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the Iridium, or a club like the Baked Potato. Very intimate, very small. Not even 100 people in a lot of instances.
Hey, what's up? Ryan Beck says, the Blue Note. Yes.
Ryan. You have the Blue Note,
okay, so the Iridium. Yeah, go. What happened to the Iridium?
So we had a I think it was in 2018. It might have been, I think it was the end of 2018. Luke had, I think it was something like, I don't know, 3 to 5 nights at the Iridium with Bill Evans. And so, he was like, it's only a week long. It's a club gig. We're doing 2 short shows a night, and a couple of nights we're only doing 1. And, it'll be easy. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, yeah. That turned out to be probably more stressful that I can remember than any stadium gig I've ever done.
Really?
And yeah.
How so?
And so Luke wanted, as I wanted to use his entire rig.
In the Iridium,
In the Iridium, which is this right here. He wanted to have both half stacks in the Iridium with his pedal board and, all the guitars we needed for the set.
You're hiring me, you're hiring my rig. That's his approach. Huh?
Right. So, so we have to air freight it, from LA to New York, so I make all the arrangements and it turns out that, which was fine. I've done that a million times, but it turns out that I didn't know until last minute that they were actually the night prior to the first show that they were doing a rehearsal in New York City on at some rehearsal studio that's on the 40th floor of an office building.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, wait a minute, what? I don't know how I didn't know, but whatever. I didn't find out until last minute.
Nobody hipped me to that, dude.
Well, right. So I'm like, all right. So I call the freight company and I'll just have them drop it off at the office building. And I flew in that morning. I was already in New York, so I'll meet the shipment and deal with it. Now, I'm also thinking about the out because, the Iridium isn't obviously in the same location as the rehearsal facility. So I've got Luke's entire rig, a huge Pelican filled with, backup, his loom and backup cabling and picks, all the strings, everything he needs. And I call the Iridium and say, hey guys, you're going to need to meet us the morning of the show at this rehearsal studio. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying rehearsal. And, meet me there. We'll load up and drive the rig and set up at the Iridium. And the guys were like, sure. And so I'm like, great. I go back to my hotel that night, get up the next morning, cab it back down to the rehearsal studio. And I'm waiting for the guys in the vans to show up. I get a call about, I don't know, a half hour after I'd been there. We don't have any vans.
Oh, hey.
And I'm like, what? What do you mean you don't have any vans? You can't get them, or you? So I'm on the phone trying to figure out why they don't have any vans. And he's like, oh, let me call you back. So
Your picture.
Time passes. I'm getting worried because it's show day, you know, even though we had plenty of time. But, you know, I'm like in, you know, I lower Midtown, you know, or somewhere. And, you know, like the Iridium's like 30 blocks, you know, away. So the guys show up in taxis.
And this stuff all has road cases, like
this is all in road cases. The 412s are lidded. The amps are in separate amp road cases. I got the loose guitars. I got, you know, Pelican. And I am just like, I've got to get this thing 30 blocks up New York City in like no time. And I got to do it in taxi cabs. And somehow I was lucky enough to flag down a minivan taxi. And I just crammed. I mean, I swear, I think one of the amp heads might have even been hanging out the window as we were driving down. I mean, we could barely fit the stuff, and it took three. It took a minivan and then two other regular cabs, but we somehow got it there. But talk about stressful. You know, that's a stressful type of a situation where you're like, oh my God, you know, I just want to get into the Iridium, get set up. And, you know, the other side of the coin is you don't have any room in a lot of these places. I mean, at the Iridium, you have a back hallway that's, you know, maybe that wide, you know, and a little seating area. And, you know, you don't have any room to maneuver. And that's the hardest thing about the aside from dealing with New York City traffic, and the fact that you can't park anywhere and unload, it can be a nightmare. But you know, it's lack of space, you know, lack of being able to see, you know, it's not so much see, but you know, those places. I mean, like the baked potato. Oh my, I have to, like, I could barely get to the guitars, you know, and give them to Luke. There's so many people, you know, it's just so tight. And so and God forbid anything major goes wrong on stage. The stages are so small, you know, I don't know that I could get behind Lukather's amps. If something did go wrong, you know, I'd probably have to, I don't know what I'd do, but I try not to think about stuff breaking, but you know, especially in gigs like that. But that's the real gist. And I think everyone kind of understands that those intimate places, it's lack of room and lack of, you know, a lot of stuff. But that was a particularly stressful, you know, day for me in New York because I was all by myself. I didn't have help. I had to literally take all this out of the 47th floor in the freight elevator and hump it out to the sidewalk all by myself. And then I got to keep an eye on it because I don't want anyone walking away with Steve Lukather's, you know, main guitar or whatever.
You walk into a pawn shop the next week and you see Luke. You go, oh man, we're gonna have to buy this back, Luke. Sorry, bro.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, so you never know. There's all kinds of stuff that comes up unexpected at times that, you know, can cause you more than normal amount of stress on a show day or something like that. But again, it's all part of the, you know, that's why we do what we do. You get them, you know, we're mostly, you know, mostly depending on where we are, you know, theater gigs and arenas, you know, are very common. And of course you get more room in a lot of instances, not all, but, you know, certain theaters are really tiny. Paramount Theater in Denver. You know, there's, you know, it's not easy there either, but it's all different. So, but that was a story I thought I'd share just because it really, you know, encapsulated what you might come across as a tech that, you know, you never expected.
The offstage stuff can be sometimes more stressful than the on, just to make it all happen.
Big time. Yeah.
And then, so, oh gosh, I was just thinking, I had a nice little question for you, but now I can't remember. There, gosh,
It'll come to you.
there's so many questions I'd love to ask you.
Sure.
Well, we'll keep on going. So, was there ever a moment where you were watching these guys, especially with Ringo there? Was there ever a moment that the musician inside you came out? This is something I have asked everybody that kind of had the music start for them and found an instrument. Was there ever a moment where you really craved, like, man, I'd love to jam with these guys for a minute? You know, I'd love to just go.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Oh, without a doubt. One of the highlights. I'll preface with Ringo Starr absolutely loves to play music.
Yes.
You know, he loves it. I mean, the guy, you know, at 80 years old, he's still touring. Like, you know, you don't see a lot of people at 80 out there, you know, hitting the pavement as hard as someone like Ringo. And he loves to play music. Sorry, I was. And so we early on, kind of what happens with a sound check is, you know, the band might roll in, let's say 4:00 in the afternoon. You know, usually a 5:00 sound check is average for us. So the band might show up at 4:00, you know, roll in with their gear, you know, go to the dressing rooms, get familiar, grab something out of catering, whatever. And then one by one, players will kind of gravitate to the stage, you know, check out their rig or, you know, Greg Raleigh always comes out early. He's one of the first, and, you know, he's stage right by me, and he's always playing the Hammond and, you know, doing whatever. And so one day I was out doing my normal routine, checking the Luke's rig. And I have a little, you know, kind of checklist, like I mentioned earlier, that I go through. Well, I do the same thing with the guitar rig. I kind of, you know, I might play a riff to check the delays or the whatever, or I might, you know, play a bit of Rosanna or something to hear the tonality of the overdrive. You know, you never know. Make sure the wah's working. So anyway, I'm just out there checking the rig, and Greg Raleigh was like, hey, you know, let's play something. And he would start, you know, just a progression or whatever. And so I would be like, okay. And we'd be out there kind of jamming. And then more people would kind of come out on the stage. And before long, I hear drums. You know, I'm jamming, like, you know, Todd Rundgren came out, and I actually think he grabbed Richard's bass, and Richard was playing guitar, or Todd's guitar or something like that. They switched off. And of course I hear this snappy drum beat going, and I turn around, and Ringo's, you know, like smiling, looking right at me, you know, Jon, you know, and we kind of jammed for a while. And so that happened. I want to say maybe, I don't know, a long time ago, you know, early on when I joined. And Warren Ham, who is in the band, he's our he's a vocalist. He plays saxophone, wind instruments, or brass rather, and keyboards. And he's a great blues singer and harmonica player, and he loves the blues. So I was talking to him and Greg Bissonette, who also is a big fan. We started a, quote, blues band. So occasionally when schedules align and they have extra time that day and they feel like jamming, we'll come out and I'll hop on Luke's rig and we'll play. And so I've gotten, I guess, a little benefit of, you know, being in that position is Ringo has come out quite a bit. So I've actually played in, I mean, obviously not on stage during his show, but I mean, that's not the point. Right. I've been able to jam with Ringo, right? You know, at least a half a dozen or more times. Wow, you know, epic, and that's pretty cool. And you know, he
that's pretty cool. Yeah, that sure is.
Well, I don't, you know, I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, you know, it's kind of like, and he gave me a cup. that sounds great, Johnny. You know, and I'm like, oh my God, it was just one of those moments where I'm like, why I'm jamming with a Beatle. I mean, I can't, it's like, wow.
I know, that's great, because my story about you was, just a couple of years ago, I'm flipping through a guitar magazine, brand new guitar issue of Premier Guitar Magazine, and I see you in it, and I'm like, my buddy Jon made it to the magazines, right on. Meanwhile, little did I realize you're jamming with Ringo.
That's so that's one of the perks, I guess, that sort of happened by accident. That I never in a million years would have dreamed of. That if you had told me at any point, that one day I'll be jamming with Ringo, I would have said you're nuts. There's no way,
Rob is jamming with Ringo. That's
yeah, I mean, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not much, but for me, it's like, oh wow. So occasionally you get, and there have been many guests that join Ringo, everywhere he goes. So, he might have. Well, you never know who's going to turn up, and they'll, sit in on Little Help from My Friends, and, you turn around and there's, 20 people, that are all famous and stars in their own right.
They're singing
that are out sitting in, so
that's epic. That's a really cool thing.
So, I mean, it's cool that, just a tech side of things, there are things that happen that are just like, oh, wow. And you get to be around some of the world's greatest, artists that ever walked the planet.
You get to see them be a human, because that's what a lot of us will forget, is that these stars are people. And all they want is that moment. They just want that moment too. And Ringo probably really just loves that. Like you're saying, he's a musician. That's what he does. He plays all the time.
I mean, he's going to play until he can't. And I think, most musicians are like that naturally. They want to do it as long as they can. But it's a physical thing. I mean, you know very well, putting on a show is, not everybody understands how physical that can be.
Yeah, it can.
As a performer, I mean, it's not easy.
No, so this kind of reminded me of the question now, so I want to get back to it, and it's a good segue. Sure. Steve will jam with anybody. Has there ever been a time where he's been like, okay, I've got this rig, but it's put away and they want me to jump out? What would Steve do real quick if they asked him? Like, would he just grab somebody's amp? Is there generally have you been with him in that situation where he's been asked to then go be a guest, or sit in with somebody, and have you had to kind of adapt without that rig? Have you ever been in that situation with him?
Yeah, I think not a lot, but there have been many times where we've had to use rental amps, for a gig where, I mean, he always tries to have his normal, like any guitar player would want their normal stuff if they can do it. But, as I discussed earlier, there are many issues that come up where you can't fly your rig because you got to have it in Europe or somewhere across the world, and you got a couple of days to fly to get there, So he has done a lot of sit-in gigs where he's on a Marshall or, not his, normal Bogner rig. And I think most of the time, if it's something like local to him in LA, if he's only playing a couple of tunes and they're all in standard tuning and he only needs maybe a main guitar and a backup, a lot of times I don't do those gigs because, why would he fly me out all the way to LA? I obviously live in Maryland. So, why would I fly all the way to do 2 songs? You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So I'm not in that position a lot locally to him around LA. But the guy could literally plug into anything and make it work. I mean, it might not be his usual choice for example, we did in 2016, we did a run with Larry Carlton in Japan. And we had a rehearsal in LA the day before we flew, and Luke showed up to it with a line 6, like Spider, an old, I think it was, I can't remember, it was the old red face or the gray face or whatever, but, just a little tiny little line 6 amp, and he had, a little bit of delay, and he did the entire band rehearsal with Larry Carlton out of a line 6, and
killed it too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it was like, he plays just like he does through the big stuff, and that was actually that I'll never forget that, because even I've been around gear a lot for my whole life, and me being a gearhead as well, I was shocked that he showed up with a line 6, and it really, it was like, wow, that's great to see him, use that and do an entire rehearsal, and it was fine and it sounded great, so when you see a player like that, it's just amazing what he can do. And his tone is certainly his fingers and his touch. The gear doesn't play much of a part in it. I mean, it does in that, he could plug into these Wagners, but he could also have the same setup in Marshalls. You might hear differences in the tonality a hair, but it's just going to sound like Lukather,
It's funny you're bringing this up, and it's also relating to Larry Carlton, and then Luke probably does, like Rob just said, look forward to that moment where he gets a guitar lesson from Larry. But I had a moment like that with Larry Carlton. I was teching a stage for him. I wasn't his guitar tech, but I was teching a stage that he was on. And I looked up on stage and I saw these 2 JBL powered Eon PA speakers. And I thought somebody had left some of our speakers on the stage. And I was like, oh. And then I looked and I was like, wait, they're plugged in. And I went over to the guitar tech and I was like, is Larry playing through 2 powered PA speakers? And he was like, yeah. And he has been now for a couple of years. And I was like, oh, my mind is blown. Like, oh my God, like Larry Carlton, the master of tone and touch and all these sounds that I think of as a Dumble guy. Like I think of this just warm, you're only going to get this sound that he gets from a tube amplifier. He's playing through 2 JBL powered Eons, and he went up on stage and knocked the socks off everybody in the house, and his tone was phenomenal. And that's it. You look at a clip of Eddie Van Halen playing a Stratocaster, and it sounds like Eddie Van Halen. It sounds like he's playing a Stratocaster, but it sounds like Eddie Van Halen. And that's what you're saying about Luke, is that he's going to go up there. He's not going to let the tool dictate the artwork. He's not going to say, this is just because I'm drawing a picture with pencil. It's not officially a Lukather piece. No, that's
right.
And then so you have to be able to represent that with them when those times come, and I guess the gig would then dictate what you would have to do for them. So
correct, and it's all based on what makes the most sense with do we rent gear, do we bring our own, do we but the bottom line, I mean, don't get me wrong, he knows what he likes, and certainly the Wagners are his main tone, but I know, for example, like we don't channel switch at all on these amps. It's set, with a fair amount of preamp gain, and, about 9 p.m. on the volume dial, which is pretty low. He doesn't play loud. Yes, Ryan, it is all about the touch. And interestingly enough, he has a very light touch. He can bash it, but he plays 9-gauge strings, and a floating tremolo setup, so he can do the Jeff Beck, bang on the bridge, and
love that.
But watching him, just the way he plays lead guitar or rhythm, it's amazing. And one thing about Luke, I will say that I find very unique. He's been on, 2,500 records in his studio career. And, so many people are like, oh, I don't know. Steve Lukather, I don't know who he is. And I always say, yeah, you do. You just don't know it yet. He's played on so many hit records that, people have heard him play, but would never realize possibly that that's the lead guitarist in Toto.
Right.
What's the other thing?
What do you call him? What's your term for that for him?
I think, he's a chameleon.
Yeah.
He really is. Where,
Absolutely.
say, for example, we just talked about, Eddie Van Halen or Steve Vai or Satriani. A lot of those guys, when you hear them play, it's them like right away. And of course, when you hear Lukather playing Rosanna or something, yeah, okay, I know that's Steve
You can tell when it's him playing versus a cover of him playing.
Correct. But when you hear him play other people's music, like he does in, like, say, I mean, he gets to wail over Santana in Ringo's band, or Todd Rundgren, or Men at Work, Colin Hay. It's hearing him play other people's music that you realize sometimes you wouldn't know it was him, just by listening. So, I can pick it out now that I've been around him long enough, but you've got to spend a lot of time around him to pick up that, man, he does a great job at blending in to where you can't even really tell it's him at times, which I think is remarkable, especially with a player that has his own touch, and and the amount of, I see, Boz Scaggs, the Tubes. There's tons of Rob's correct. There's a lot of stuff he does where,
his stuff.
I didn't have any idea.
I had no idea. I listened to that some of that Fee Waybill stuff growing up, and I loved the completion backwards principle. That album to me was amazing, and I also, at the same time, loved Toto and everything I'd ever heard from Steve Lukather. I had no idea until eons later, until like 10 years later, that all that time I was listening to Luke on all that stuff, and it was like, oh, and that's what you're saying. Like, and there can be a blessing and a curse to having a style that is so instantly recognizable, and it can come and go. A voice can come and go. But if you're somebody that has the talent like he does, and then is also lucky enough to be in the industry, and then also be like, a guitarist, we're lucky. We're not the face of the band a lot of times as the singer or the identity, but he's actually been the identity of things that he's in. He wrote some of these incredible songs at the age of 18 and was performing them at that age. And then became, the guitarist in Tubes and doing all this stuff. He becomes something that
Hi, Zumi. My good friend Zumi. I just made a comment. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, please, this is it.
When Luke plays Black Magic Woman, he sounds more like Santana than Santana himself.
Exactly, and that's what I'm trying to say here, is that there is a thing that happens when you listen, when you really listen, and when you realize, wow, wait, that's that guy. Oh my gosh. And that's when you realize you're in the power, in the presence of greatness. And at the same time, he's humble, correct? Like, he doesn't let any of this, like,
very much so. Thing, right? Very, very much so. I mean, a guy like that, you might, think, he is very, he'll be the first. If you give him a compliment, I just keep playing, and it's like, dude, you're Steve Lukather, but he's very, very humble and very appreciative, of course, of all the comments that he gets, but he is very down to earth. It's not about, him being the best guitar player or anything like that. There's no, all the top guys know there's no real such thing as the best guitar player. It's so vastly different.
Right.
Styles are different. Genres of music are different. And one of the things that makes Lukather really, really excellent is the vast array of genres he's been a part of. And I think, I mean, starting even say, you know, with a song like Africa, which, you know, was kind of a world beat, you know, thing at the time, uh, you know, and that was a newer genre. So it was, you know, and then he can be on a jazz record,
Right.
you know, or a rock record or a blues. Oh my gosh. When you hear him play blues, it's like,
yeah, to him playing blues I hadn't
it is great. I mean, I love it when he plays blues.
I heard him on. I really got into Luke in the early 2000s and through some of the guitar techniques magazines and stuff from Europe, and he gets a lot of love in those magazines because of his ability to do exactly what we're saying, become so many different things.
Yeah,
and that really that's what why I really wanted to talk to you is because you've been able to do that, and a lot of the technicians in this industry that I respect have kind of pulled from their toolbox at different times to say, okay, I got to be able to do this right now. I got to be able to do this right now. Oh, they need me to be able to do this. And that's where he is. And he's in that technical world as having this rig that you have behind you that's so technical, but he's in that technical player world as well of being able to say, yeah, I can do that. If you need that, I can do that. And you just sit back and go, wow, yeah, he can do that. So,
and you know, the big thing too is, you know, it's not just the guitar with him. I mean, you should hear him play the drum kit or the grand piano or the bass. I mean, he does play bass in Ringo's band on the last two tours. Hamish Stewart from the Average White Band came into the band, and on some of the songs, he plays guitar and Luke plays bass. And man, I mean, he's amazing. He is an all around gifted human being and musician. And you know, I mean, he could play drums in his own band. I mean, you know, that's the thing. I've heard him. I've seen him. It's the talent level there is so frightening. But literally.
And then this goes to speak to the ego, because he's the kind of guy that he could do it all, but he enjoys the musicianship of others. And that's why he likes to have other people do it.
Yeah.
That feeds.
It's I think the collaboration of playing with other, you know, people as well, and in a band setting for sure. And he, at least I haven't seen him play. Now, if he could play drums, bass, guitar, keyboard, all at the same time, that would be that would be amazing. But
that would be something, right?
Obviously, I think that you know, his calling is the guitar. I mean, he and Mike Landau from a young age were best friends and played guitar all the time, and I think pushed each other to be as good. And then of course he had Jeff Porcaro and David Paich and the Toto guys, and you know, that's who he is. It's just it's truly a gift, you know, that he has that much talent. And I think it's you know, I'm lucky to be able to be around him the way I am, and to learn just from seeing what he does. And you know, I've occasionally, when I can, hey, what'd you do there? And he'll,
does he show you a little thing there? Yeah, that's
he doesn't slow it down. You got he's not
you gotta keep up, right?
Yeah, he'll just look at you and be like, what? I did this. And you're like, oh, cool, thanks.
Gotta remember.
And then you gotta run back and grab a guitar. What did he do? And you know.
I just want to say thank you too for Live for Live. They're saying they bought their first guitar from Jim Chaney's mom at Garrett Park Guitars. Here we are in our hometown of Maryland. And And at that time, she gave two of the Jimmy's Chicken Shack CDs, the local big Maryland band.
Sure.
And those albums inspired him to become a musician and eventually a sound tech.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, and thank you for always being here. Live for live. I see you here a lot, and I appreciate you hanging out. And that's why I love this Wednesday night stream, because I love to explore how music can take us so many different places. For me,
Yeah.
I started music. The saxophone has come up in almost all of these too. The sax was my first love.
Yeah.
It spoke to me, and I had
Yeah.
Billy Joel and Styx, and then eventually Zappa and Steve Vai and all the
Right.
evolution of the guitar and stuff. And then
Right.
it started to bore me, and songwriting became much more important, and playing became more important, and entertaining, and to be able to do all of that was I was lucky. I was very blessed. And to
Sure.
be able to then also at the same time what I did, and before any of it, I watched the whole scene. I watched Barry from Panda Productions, somebody that was a huge
Oh, Barry, yes.
on so many of us. He was the sound guy
Yep.
around town for all of us. And I watched him work and stack speakers with his staff, and I just would
Yep.
jump in and do it. And I wanted to learn too. I wanted to just
Yeah.
find out. And it was people like that when they see, like I said at the beginning of our stream tonight, when you really see somebody doing something that they love, and it's something you love,
Yeah.
or that you have an interest in, you and they want to give something back to you, and yeah, the whole Panda days, Ryan Beck says Panda. um
Yeah.
and that those were the Panda days, and that's what it all is about. And the stream is a wonderful gift. Thank you for producing this. Thank you
Oh,
very much,
thanks,
Rob.
Rob.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. The music has been a gift, and the you technicians, everybody that works behind the scenes, is a gift, completely unacknowledged. There's no rapper, there's no boat. You guys don't get any of that. And I've been in the industry now for so many years as a non-musician, and I had to just finally say, look, I know so many people that are great people that work with amazing people, and there's a reason that they work with these amazing people, because they are actually great people. I want to talk to them because they don't get the chance to tell their story. And I think
Mhm. Yeah.
having been there for your story, and you seeing my story, and us living it together,
Sure.
it's just been great. And Gail says she loves the behind the scenes stories. I love hearing them. I mean, I've been to so many shows, and I will continue to go to shows. The behind the scenes for me is just it was always where it was. And I
Yeah.
had a fear of crowds. I really had a
Yeah.
fear of crowds. I couldn't go into too many of the bigger crowds depending on the situation. And I would need somebody like you with me. I would need a
Right.
guitar tech, my buddy, that could
Sure.
walk with me and kind of say, yeah, it's all right, David. Nobody's gonna hurt you
Right.
out there. I liked it
Sure.
backstage. I liked it there. And I
Yeah.
liked having staff and crew, and I loved
Yeah.
the show will go on aspect of it all. And you guys, the technicians, the Ryan Becks and the Jeff Everharts, and the Will Millers and the Michael Loons of the world that I got to know. I needed the world to know about you guys, and I'm very
Thank
blessed
you
to
very
know
much.
you.
I certainly appreciate it.
No, I
We
appreciate you
generally
taking.
are
Yeah,
on the not as noticeable side of the business.
of the
So
stage, yeah.
we're used to being you know hidden behind the scenes, and it's always nice to get a little recognition. And also, I think really to let other people know what it is that we really do and how different it can be. For the in the music industry,
Yeah,
not all guitar players or guitar techs happen to play guitar.
right.
There's
Very
many
true.
different types of guitar techs, and
Mhm.
it all just boils down to what that particular artist requires. And if you happen to have skills that fit that particular artist needs, then you're the right guy for the job.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of that. And but I will say 30 odd years I've been playing the guitar, certainly has one of the reasons why I can do what I do is having that experience with musical gear and playing as well, to know, oh, well, you're looking for a new wah-wah pedal. This one's cool. Try this one, or I need a new delay, or what. Luke is always asking me, what should I get? What should I get? I want some, I want a phaser. What should I get? And, so I'm always, and that's just knowing guitar gear and having played it. And, I know what his rig sounds like. So when I try out stuff, I can I'm not Lukather, but I have enough knowledge of his rig to where I know what it was supposed to sound like. So when I check out new pedals or new gear, I always have a control that I can compare it to and go, hey, I think this sounds great. Check it out and see what you think.
Yeah.
And so that's how we kind of work together and evolve, on a gear front.
That's cool how you said you got to know the artist as well as the gear, because there are plenty of artists out there that don't care one bit about the gear. They don't want to even hear about it. It takes them mentally away. And you have to know that about that artist, that person does not want to hear about anything about that. So they Live Force says, I prefer being behind the scenes, but it is so nice getting the appreciation and the recognition every now and then. And I'm sure, I know I've been there. It's been, I've definitely had my moments where I've been like, man, I can't believe I just got through that. Right. I gotta tell somebody that we just got through this night, and you're not going to believe what we just went through to get these guys on stage. And it was epic. And that was a great night, and there's just so many alternative jobs in the music industry.
Correct.
That music doesn't have to be necessarily the vehicle. The industry can help define where you fit into all of this. There's we have somebody, a shout out from Japan. Yuki is
hi Yukika, how are you? Thank you so much for watching.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. Thank you for being here. Japan, one of my most favorite places that I've ever been. And
by far.
The appreciation of musicianship in Japan.
It's special.
It's special. It's a very special place. The music culture there. And the technical side of Japan. Now, you've gigged, obviously, in Japan.
Many times. Luke plays Japan almost every year. We're going back. As soon as this virus stuff gets dealt with, we'll be going right back, I'm sure.
Would you go so far as to say it's one of your favorite places? And if not, what would be one of your favorite places?
For touring, yes, I would say Japan would be my favorite, or at least in the top two of touring, just because of the way you tour Japan. It's a totally different experience.
Yes.
I agree, Ryan. I would have to preface as saying, yes, my number one favorite. Anytime I know I'm going to Japan, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
And there's many reasons why. But the attention to detail is just, you're not going to get any better. No. From dealing with local stage crews to, all the great production people. It's amazing what they do on many levels. A lot of times I've come in the morning, on a show day, and the whole back line's set up when you walk in. You're like, what?
Right.
So
it's very true. You
and believe me, there, if you're a tech and you walk in and not only is it set up, they measure everything. They know every, you set it up like for a rehearsal or something, and they're going to come in behind you and measure every detail of your everything.
Yep.
And so you might do the show and go to a new venue, and you're walking in at whenever in the morning, 10, 11 in the morning, and, you know, your whole backline set up perfectly as if you had done it yourself, you know, and you're like, wow, you know, and it's attention to detail. They work so well together and with us, and it just makes our experience that much easier and better. And you know, traveling through Japan, a lot of times we're on the bullet trains going from city to city. You know, we are never transporting our own gear. They all, you know, drive it overnight and get it to the next venue and do all that. So, you know, it's like a kind of more of a fly tour where you're staying in hotels overnight, getting up, jumping on a bullet train, riding an hour or two to, you know, wherever, Osaka, Tokyo, Fukuoka, Sapporo, wherever you may be traveling in Japan. But it's just amazing. I mean, not to mention the culture and the food. Oh,
Food.
you know, it's like,
most incredible sushi you'll ever.
oh, udon, ramen.
If you
You
don't
know,
like sushi and you go to Japan, you leave Japan loving sushi. It's just the way it is. It's the way it is. It's amazing.
I agree. I can't. I just that there's so many things to look forward to over there, and I hope to be back as soon as possible. I always look forward to it, just because, you know, it's so wonderful. But, you know, that being said, there are, you know, beautiful other places that are fun
I was going to ask,
to
what
be in, but
would be
in a
another
different,
place?
you know, a non-comparable kind of way.
What would be another place then? Like, so you really enjoyed that from an all around level. What would be like your favorite place to go just on a beauty level? Like, you like to go to this place because after the gig or before the gig, you know, you're gonna, this place kind of, you get to look out and there's an ocean there, or it's
Sure.
you end up in this really cool hotel. What's like another place that kind of became like your favorite to kind of hit on the road?
Well, I although I'm not there very often, New Zealand or Australia.
Yeah. Okay.
I spent 95 days straight in Australia, between back-to-back tours. So I was there for a long. It was actually a little too long, but but I got a little homesick on the end of that one. But 95 days is a long time.
That's quite a trip. And then,
you know, but the beaches
back,
are beautiful, and getting to see that. But at the same token, you know, Cape Town or Johannesburg, South Africa. What is it? What is it? Table Mountain there, or there's a mountain there that the clouds, you know, go over, and it's beautiful. You know, there's many places. Canada has some really beautiful country up there, and we've been up there. And of course, South America. You know, Rio is a gorgeous place. Occasionally, I'll get to play golf in you know, on days off, and I've played in, you know, Canada and Rio and Europe and all over. So that's kind of fun. But, you know, they're all kind of different for different reasons.
Right.
And of course, Europe. Oh, there's some beautiful cities in Europe as well. I mean, so many to name. But like Ljubljana is really nice. Prague. Oh, I love Prague.
And it's a different, you get a different
Scandinavia, Norway,
for in Europe, but it's a different kind of fun than it is in Japan as far as the process.
Totally different. You can't really compare. Yeah.
Right. So
it's much larger. There's more, obviously. You're traveling on your average Europe tours. You're going country to country every night. You know, you might be going Italy one day, up to Germany, you know, over to, you know, wherever, Latvia, or where, you know, you're Brussels, you know, all over the place. Copenhagen is beautiful. You know, I've been to a lot of crazy places. The Faroe Islands, which is north of like the UK, in the middle of the North Atlantic. that was an amazingly beautiful place.
And you get the
Um,
moment sometimes to stop back and sit back and look and go, while it's happening, or do you have to kind of reflect? You have to like wait until the end of the tour and go, man, we did this, we did that. I can barely remember it. Do you get that?
usually that's a good question. Yeah, usually there is a reflection period because a lot of the times, you might be hitting some of the, well, for example, in the Faroe Islands, that was all the way that was the last show, or actually what turned out to be the last show of the entire tour. And I think we were out for 5 weeks, So you start, you definitely start feeling the grind,
Right.
And there's sort of, that last week of tour, you might do 5 shows a week or so. But that last week, it just drags because you're going home in a week. You might be excited to get home because you've been out on the road for 5 weeks. And of course, I guess it's similar to, back when we were all in grade school and it was like the last day of school for the summer. And it, that feeling of, this is endless. It's never going to end, So I think there's a bit of, at times you can get kind of tired and caught up in the grind and just, I just want to get home. And
you just want to get home.
And then, once you've been home for a couple of weeks, you're like, you might be looking back at all the pictures you took and go,
right.
Wow, I was actually in this place. And
I can't believe it. Yeah,
you remember back to what you did and how cool it was and the little things.
Right. You can
you kind of got to take what you can get. The highs can be really high, the lows can be really low. And it is certainly, something that a lot of people would probably have trouble doing. Unless you really, you definitely got to want to be out there doing that.
Right.
I don't think, the average person would want to be doing it for a very long time unless they're really,
made for
want to be there. And in my case, it just worked out that it made sense for me to go with Steve Lukather from Toto to Ringo or wherever he goes. And, luckily for me, in my case, Ringo has kept him in the All-Star band ever since then. So I've had the fortune of being the guitar tech there on Ringo for that. And I'm very thankful to have that opportunity. And of course, Toto, it keeps me going back and forth right with Luke. I know I'm in charge of the gear. I know, what's going on every tour, and it just makes it easier for both of us. There have been a couple of tours in recent years past that I took like a tour off because I was getting burnt out. I needed a break at times, and that'll occasionally come up. And Luke has been grateful enough to say, "Hey, go. I'll get someone to watch me while you're gone." And that's been, and he didn't have to do that. So, that to me, that is
speaks for yeah.
That's really cool of him to because it's tough when you're gone, sometimes 250 days or more out of the year, especially with a schedule like Lukather. It can seem very endless, at times. And, so on the one hand, it's been sad for me not having that ability to work with him. But at the same time, it could be worse. I've gotten to spend a lot of time at home. I've been fishing all year. I've been, doing a lot of different things, working on my new studio. I'm almost done. I got the headphone stuff coming this next week. I'm excited, and I'm ready to get back to some musical work very shortly. So there are things coming for this coming year that I'm looking forward to. I got a few gigs on the side, and which will fire back up in the spring. And, I'm just going to be doing what I can until we can get back out and do shows.
Yep.
Which, who knows? Yep. 2022 is where I'm putting my money.
Yeah, well, we'll be
on that.
rocking. I think we'll be rocking real soon, and I'm sure you will be. And we've been talking close to 2 hours, so I probably should wrap this up. YouTube and stream are going to go. Hey, you kind of
Sorry, guys, if everyone left by now.
But I could sit here. Really, I could sit here with you for hours and just.
Oh,
Talk
me, I could too. I could too. I love talking to you, and this has been, again, thank you so much for having me on, and we've gotten a really nice lot of time to catch up and reminisce about everything, and I hope your viewers have learned something about this, and maybe we do another one sometime.
I'd love to. Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to.
I'd love to. I want to do a little bit of a round table at some point here.
Sure.
With some of the technicians that I've had on in the audio world, and then the round table with as we get more into some of the musical technicians as well. So let's see a couple of comments. First off, let's acknowledge everybody in the chat. Thank you guys all for being here.
Yes, thank you.
From everybody that's been here. A lot of you guys have been here the whole time, and I really appreciate all your input and all the questions. You guys were amazing tonight asking some of these questions. On your way out, hit the thumbs up if you can. I really would appreciate the like, and that'll show Jon that we really appreciated his time tonight too. Rob says, both of you guys need to know, though, there are always special people in the audience that nod in appreciation for what you guys do. Every show there are, and I do agree. I absolutely agree with that. There are in each show the guys that are watching and that enjoy watching. There's the guitarists that are going, man, I would have played this note, but there's the people that respect the process, and you and I, we saw that early, and so we appreciate that. We're an hour north of you guys in PA, so yeah, guys, he wants to make sure you keep.
Okay, I see that, Rob. I will certainly let you know.
Yep, and Tim Collins, hey buddy, thanks for being here. We appreciate you too, man.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
And Yukika. Yep, and she can't wait to see you in Japan.
Awesome.
Azumi, thank you. Thanks for the fun talk, and thank you guys.
Thanks, Azumi. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you soon.
Yes, we will make sure. I cannot wait for the industry to just open back up and for everything to start rocking again for us all. And Jon,
I agree 100%.
Really, thank you for being here. Ryan says last time he saw you was in Dubai.
Oh, Dubai, correct, Ryan. Wow. That's correct. That was amazing. Oh, that was so unexpected. We wound up at that was actually a fly date that was a very stressful time. But Ryan, seeing you there, that really helped. That was a great, interesting gig.
When you cross paths with somebody on the road that you've met before, all of a sudden you remember that gig.
Yeah.
Like you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Now all of a sudden. It brings that bond back to you where you're just like,
oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, yeah, well, I remember you. Oh, my God. What are you doing here? Whoa. And then that gig is a special gig for you.
Of course.
It's something. It's just the industry is a beautiful place, and you guys are wonderful.
And it truly is like a big family because especially with the people you get to know and you're traveling with and friends that do it. I mean, not everybody can do that kind of thing, and it's sort of like a special connection you have with other like-minded people,
right?
And you tend never to forget that because you're both going through the same exact thing. And yes, that was the last time. Boo.
Rest in peace, Boo. God.
Oh God, I missed him. I missed him so much.
Somebody special. He was truly special.
And yeah, it is. It's a family, and when you see people out on the road in the trenches, and it's like, brother, what are you doing here? It's like running into Ryan in Dubai. It's always a pleasure.
Well, speaking of brotherhood, next week, Gary Hurst is.
Oh, I'll be tuning in for that for sure.
Oh, you got to be here. Okay, so we'll close out with a little tease for next week. Okay. Gary needs. Okay, so everybody here, thank you for being here. Make sure you're here next week. Gary needs like a 3-parter. He needs like Era, stream. I need a stream for Gary's 70s into 80s, and then
Oh my
Gary's
God.
80s into 90s, and then Gary's 90s into today. But next
Sure.
week we're gonna have Gary on the show, and on the cruise to the edge, Rob is totally gonna get you to play late night live with the crew. So yeah, he says get a nap, make sure you're ready to jam out. That
Okay.
would be awesome. That'll be a good time.
Okay.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that one.
Right on. Right on.
Guys, my brother, I'm so glad you could join. I'm really glad this all worked out. You know,
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thank you again for thinking of me. I really,
one of the first
appreciate
people I
that.
thought of. I really wanted to reach out, and I'm glad that our schedules worked out in such that we could get.
Yeah, and man, all the hours rapping this week was a lot of fun for me. So we'll keep that up and continue for sure, without a doubt.
Great, awesome. All
also,
right,
I need to pick your brain about some pedalboard stuff later on.
I love the pedal stuff. Yeah, maybe one day you and I'll just have a stream and we'll chat about pedal boards. So
yeah, or we'll build one or something. I'll probably have to build something in the next year anyway. So I'm always building pedal boards.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, my brother, I'm gonna wrap it.
Yep. All right, brother. Thanks so much, and thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Hope it was informative to a point, and I didn't bore anyone to death.
I cannot. There was not a moment where I was bored. I love this whole evening, and I love this stream series. So, I
really enjoyed it, and Happy New Year, everyone, and hope to see you as soon as humanly possible. Be well, stay safe, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, you guys take care. Rock on. Thanks, Jon. Talk to you guys later.
Yep. All right.
Thanks. Bye.